When people talk about the conflict between Iran and Israel, the conversation usually starts with a missile strike or a political threat. But that's only the surface of the story, because what we're seeing today didn't start with a single event. It is the result of a strategy that has been developing for more than 40 years. And if you want to understand that strategy, you have to understand the man who has led Iran since 1989. Ali Khamenei. Not just who he is, but how he thinks about power, security, and influence in the Middle East. Before the Iranian Revolution in 1979, Iran was a very different country. It was ruled by the Shah, who was closely aligned with the United States and maintained quiet cooperation with Israel. At the time, Israel and Iran were not enemies. They shared intelligence and economic ties because both governments saw common strategic interests in the region. But many Iranians were unhappy with the Shah's rule. They believed the government had become too authoritarian and too dependent on foreign powers. That dissatisfaction eventually exploded into revolution. In 1979, protests and political unrest brought down the Shah's government. A new Islamic republic was created under the leadership of Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. The new government wanted to completely redefine Iran's role in the world. Instead of aligning with Western powers, Iran positioned itself as a revolutionary state that would challenge them. Part of that new vision involved rejecting Israel and supporting Palestinian resistance. This was the moment when Iran's relationship with Israel changed from cooperation to confrontation. Ali Khamenei was not originally the most famous figure of the revolution, but he was deeply involved in the new political system that emerged afterward. He served in several positions, including President of Iran. Then, in 1989, after Ayatollah Khomeini died, Khamenei became Iran's new supreme leader. This position gave him enormous authority. The supreme leader is not just a symbolic figure. He has influence over the military, the intelligence services, and the country's overall strategic direction. That means many of Iran's long-term foreign policy decisions ultimately pass through him. From Iran's perspective, the country faced a serious security problem. Iran had recently fought a devastating war with Iraq during the 1980s. That conflict killed hundreds of thousands of people and showed how vulnerable the country could be. Iran's leaders concluded that they needed a way to protect the country without relying on foreign allies, so they began developing a strategy based on regional influence rather than direct confrontation. One of the most important groups in this strategy was Hezbollah in Lebanon. Over time, Hezbollah developed into a powerful political and military organization. It gained influence inside Lebanon while also maintaining the ability to confront Israel along the northern border. From Israel's perspective, this created a new kind of threat. Instead of facing only neighboring states, Israel now had to deal with armed groups supported by Iran. Israel responded by closely monitoring Iran's activities across the region. Israeli intelligence agencies focused heavily on tracking Iranian influence in Lebanon, Syria, and other countries. Israel also carried out operations designed to prevent Iran from establishing strong military positions near its borders. This created an ongoing cycle of actions and reactions between the two sides. Over time, the conflict between Iran and Israel evolved into what analysts often call a shadow war. Instead of large conventional battles, the confrontation involved intelligence operations, cyber attacks, sabotage, and targeted military strikes. Both countries tried to weaken the other's strategic position while avoiding a direct war that could destabilize the entire region. This kind of conflict is less visible than traditional warfare, but it can be just as intense. The Syrian civil war created a new stage for this rivalry. Iran supported the Syrian government and sent advisors and allied forces to help stabilize the regime. Israel, meanwhile, was determined to prevent Iran from building permanent military infrastructure inside Syria. As a result, Syria became one of the main arenas where the two sides indirectly confronted each other. As the conflict grew more complex, international actors became increasingly involved. The United States and several European countries imposed sanctions on Iran and pushed for negotiations over Iran's nuclear program. Meanwhile, regional powers such as Saudi Arabia also viewed Iran's growing influence with suspicion. The rivalry between Iran and Israel was no longer just a bilateral issue. It had become part of a much wider geopolitical struggle. In recent years, the confrontation between Iran and Israel has become more direct. There have been missile exchanges, military strikes, and increasingly open threats from both sides. Each development raises concerns that the conflict could expand beyond the shadow war that has defined it for decades. The future of this confrontation is still uncertain. Diplomacy, military deterrence, and regional politics all play a role in shaping what happens next. What is clear is that the decisions made over the past 4 decades have created a very complex situation. So when people ask how the conflict between Iran and Israel developed, the answer is not a single event. It is a chain of decisions, strategies, and reactions that have unfolded over many years. And understanding those decisions is the key to understanding the conflict we see today.